Hi, I'm Jennifer McCumber, president of HowToStrip.com, author of Freedom 5, and I'm leading the movement for exotic dancer development at clubs across the country as well as online. Who are you thinking about voting for in the election of 2012? That's a very personal question and one meant for your personal reflection rather than public acknowledgement. But since this will be the most important presidential election of our time, most likely, I have felt the need to reveal some riveting stories, facts, and unique perspective as politics greatly affects the survival of our exotic dancer industry and how much money you can bring home as a stripper. After all, the worst mistake you can make is to not vote at all. When I was in college and in my early 20s, I was as liberal could be. I was part of the new social media liberal arts college movement that was hearkening the arrival of what would be Barack Obama, our agent of change. I remember when his book, The Audacity of Hope, came out about 1 to 2 years before he ran for president. I read it ferociously, agreeing with the ideologies of leading with fairness for all. The reason? Simply this. I was rebelling against hypocritical religious dogma, judgmental social circles, and closed-minded individuals that told me how to run my life. I was brought up in extremist churches where drinking and dancing and watching rated R movies was a sin. Sex before marriage was a sin. Listening to secular music was sinful as well. I became a music major and surrounded myself with the creative, the dramatic, and the liberal. I began to abhor people who looked down on homosexuals, women's choice, and a plethora of other things that seemed to be fun to do in college. I was even dating a guy at the time who proclaimed he would vote for Hillary Clinton and take advantage of government programs. He was the kind of guy that wanted to milk the system if he could. He could never keep a consistent job, and he always quit everything that he started. So even though I developed these strong political beliefs as a 20-something-year-old, I didn't have the slightest clue about what national debt really meant. I even had one of my graduate school classmates tell me that the national debt is not a big deal and people blow it out of proportion as to how it really affects us as individuals in this country. I hadn't the slightest idea what stock market values and tax rates meant. I always made below $20,000 a year working part-time in college to pay my living expenses, as I had an academic scholarship that paid for a large portion of my education. And of course, student loans for the rest. I always thought that the stock market and tax rates would have little to do with me. After all, I wasn't some company on Wall Street or part of the percentage of the population that gets taxed 35% of their income, not including whatever their state income tax was. I grew up in Florida, which doesn't even have state income tax, so I didn't know that state income tax existed and must be filed on a separate form from federal income tax. On a day I will never forget, at the beginning of 2008, all of this changed forever, and something happened to me that I thought was completely impossible. After I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi with a Master of Music degree, I went out into the real world and got a job. Of course, before I discovered exotic dancing. I started making around $35,000 a year as the director of marketing and public relations for a music-related nonprofit. I noticed that before taxes, my paycheck was around $792 a week. Now that is a lot of money for a 25-year-old just out of college. And then I noticed something that I never did before. The amount of money I brought home, my net income, was only around $450 to $500. Now that's over $300 a week that was being taken out of my check by federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, FICA, and others. I began to think about what I would do with that extra $300 per week if I had it at my disposal. I mean, that's enough for a nice car payment or my share of the rent for the month or clothes, food, and even a weekend vacation. And then I started asking my boss questions. I asked him, why? And he said that it was out of his hands and that I could thank the government for taxing the hell out of his business, which he was then passing down to me. And I said to myself, the government? So I started a facts-finding quest. I was determined to figure out how politics work, how the economy works, because if the government can take so much money away from my check every single week, what else are they doing against my best interest? And what's this hubbub from conservatives about tax cuts? I certainly wanted some tax cuts at that point. Now, this is when I realized a universal but simple truth about politics as inspired by my new boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband. If you think that the government knows how best to spend your money and run your life, then you're a liberal. If you think that you know how best to spend your money and run your life, you're a conservative, or somewhere on the conservative spectrum. I had never heard it put so elegantly in my life. How could it be that simple? I was previously so bogged down by different political scenarios and social lifestyle choices that I completely neglected to learn anything about how the economy really works from an unbiased point of view. Just the facts and economics, so that we can have a country where we have freedom to choose. And after all, money does make the USA possible, along with grocery shopping, fixing your car, getting to work, going on vacation, or whatever else you want or need to do. Forget about the Democrats and the Republicans for a second. We're simply discussing economic and political philosophy here. Now you might be saying, no, wait. Okay, aren't conservatives very religious and against exotic dancing and other progressive lifestyle choices? Aren't they the ones that tell you how to run your life? This is the same question that I asked because I was not going to be told to go to church every Sunday like a good girl should and give up my F-bombs with my friends and a bunch of other things. I worked at Hooters as a waitress in college and I loved being rebellious, so this was a pretty serious issue for me. Now here's the deal. While there are some Christian conservative related groups that are extremists and judge people for looking at them the wrong way, conservatives stand for the freedom of religious expression separate from government mandate, meaning if you believe in God and you want to hold prayer meetings or Bible studies or speak out about your values, you should be able to do so based on our First Amendment freedoms. You should also be allowed to choose between being Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian, and a plethora of other faiths and other religions. This country was founded on freedom of religion. Now, where many conservatives go wrong is proclaiming that you have to believe the way that they do. You know, pro-life, against gay marriage, anti-strip clubs, etc., etc., etc. Now, keep in mind, exotic dancing businesses also have their First Amendment freedoms to be in business and supply a huge demand for classy, fun, clean entertainment as well. It's legal after all, and the First Amendment works both ways. This is where libertarianism comes in. Libertarians are completely exotic dancer friendly and choice friendly. Within the conservative spectrum, they are far to the left of most Republicans in that they believe government shouldn't have anything to do with the choices we make socially and lifestyle-wise. They're characters like Ron Paul and John Stossel, who are pro-choice, pro-strip clubs. They want to legalize drugs like marijuana, and they think that homosexual people should be left alone to live their lifestyle if they want. You get the idea. Their central philosophy is a laissez-faire mentality that people can make their own decisions and that collectively as a society, we are much better off doing so. Government cannot save people from themselves. Fiscally or financially, they're far to the right of conservatives, meaning they're more conservative than the conservatives. They believe in the lowest taxes, giving much more money back to you because you earned it. The government didn't. And since the government didn't earn it, they're not going to be as careful with it. And they'll be wasteful, inefficient, and take away from the private sector, which consists of the nation's businesses like Walmart, UPS, Albertsons, JCPenney's, Macy's, Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, Amazon.com, and most importantly, your exotic dancing business. And of course, any other store that you choose as a citizen to go and purchase products from. That's how you define the private sector in the economy. You see, if the government is getting more of your stripping money, because after all, you're required to pay taxes on your own, you have less of it to spend at the stores you love, buying things for your family that they need, and therefore the economy will suffer as a result because all of that money will be going to, for instance, bankrupt solar energy companies like Solyndra that have wasted $500 million of our taxpayer money instead of going to you and your family for the things that you need to buy. I want to really put this into perspective for you. Most strippers are in the, per se, 25% tax bracket if they make between $35,300 and $85,600 as of the current 2012 tax code. Now, if you're making more than that, you can see where you fall in the tax code chart for 2012. So what this means is if you live in a state with no state income tax, which includes Florida, Texas, Nevada, Alaska, Washington, South Dakota, and Wyoming, you only have to pay the government 25% of your income plus a 15% self-employment tax. A 15% self-employment tax on top of 25% federal? That's 40% of your income going to Uncle Sam. And if you live in the 41 other states that do have a state income tax on top of all that, which most of you probably do, you're looking at 50% of your income gone to the government. Now, what does this mean for your exotic dancing business? And how does voting for the president relate to all of this? I mean, you might be saying, well, I'm a sole proprietor as a dancer or an independent contractor, so I really don't own a business like the businesses I see that have brick and mortar stores, so I can get around paying these taxes after all. Why would the government care about what I make as a stripper? If Obama gets reelected, he's going to raise taxes and crack down on every business he can to find as much money as he can to put towards government programs. Now, if you want to keep giving half of your income away every night to the government, be my guest. But I'm going to vote for someone that wants to bring in a 15% or 20% flat tax or otherwise reduce tax rates from what they already are now, like for instance Mitt Romney. Liberal politicians want you to make $500 a night and give them $250, make $800 a night and give them $400, make $1,000 a night and give them $500, all to go to other people who don't work, government growth, and micromanagement of our freedoms, decreasing our ability to make choices, decreasing our ability to do business, and decreasing the economy's ability to come back. Everyone always asks why oil and gas prices are so high, why medical costs are so high, and the answer is high taxes and increased regulation. The government inhibits the free market's ability to operate the most efficiently they can. And so where does this cost get passed to? The customer. That's you and I. That is you and I. They have to stay in business somehow, businesses in our country, and the point of owning a business is to make a little money, hopefully. So what happens if you skip out on your taxes and you don't pay them? Well, The IRS will probably be auditing you in about 5 years, and you'll have to pay them then, plus penalties and interest, even if you don't have the money. There are only 2 things that you cannot escape in this life, and that is death and taxes. Now, it would be irresponsible to pay no taxes because much of it goes towards keeping us safe, roads, and etc., but a very small portion. Anything else on top of those reasons, keeping us safe and our country free, is inefficiently used because, drumroll please, the government is not running a successful business. They aren't turning a profit. They're in debt. And they're wasting enormous amounts of money on $16 muffins. You might have heard about that scandal. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and too much welfare and micromanaging how parents should raise their kids. What will become of this country that was founded on freedom and individuality and initiative? The kind of freedom and individuality you have as an exotic dancer. But that is being threatened. If a private sector business like Apple Computer, for instance, pulled this kind of failure and reckless spending and folly, they would not only fire their CEO, but they would be headed straight for the swirling toilet of bankruptcy. It's about time we fire our country's CEO for denying a pipeline that would have created jobs, for saying he'll create jobs but not doing it, for failed alternative energy plans and a hugely failed Obamacare health system. Do you think you'll be able to get good medical care in 20 or 30 years? Think again. You better start saving a ton of money stripping, because all of the good doctors who can really get people well are discontinuing their participation with most insurance companies. They are out of network so that they can get paid for what they do, for Christ's sake, which means you will be paying the full boat of cash with no help. None of this may matter to you now, but what does matter is if that Obama gets reelected, your strip club may go out of business because the regulations and the tax rates will become so inflated, and your patrons will spend less money because they have less money in their pockets to spend because they're paying more in taxes. You can say goodbye to your frequent high rollers who spend hours in the VIP room because their investments will most likely lose value because of the down economy and falling stock market. Don't be deceived by the increase in stock market this year. It's an election year, and that is typical. The dollar will continue to lose its value because the national debt is so high that our dollar will have little meaning anymore. And you will be spending all of your money to fill up your gas tank because the price of gas just keeps going up and up and up. Is any of this ringing true for you yet? From the feedback I've gotten from strippers around the country, this has been one of the worst times for making money. There's a reason for that. Obama is the most extreme liberal president this country has ever seen. How do you define liberalism anyways? I know because I used to be one. It is a mentality that what is best for the group is best for the individual, not the other way around. It's not based on individual freedoms and individual initiative. It's a controlling, socialistic, micromanagement mentality that is based on reactionary fear. It's much like the tactics that Hitler and Stalin used to charismatically address people publicly, preaching redistribution of wealth and fairness for all. And now that is disguised as having everyone pay their fair share. Let me ask you something. What if your manager at your club told you that you had to give all of your income away every night to the girls that didn't do so well? Or if you worked at a club where it didn't matter what you made, your tips would be shared equally with all of your fellow dancers. You'd be out the door in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, you can't get out of this country and out of taxes, because that's what liberalism is like. Liberalism rewards the underachievers in society and enables, well, they reward the underachievers in society and they penalize success and wealth, all for the sake of evening the playing field. I don't know about you, but I have no desire to share my tips, unless I'm, of course, tipping out my bouncers and my DJ. I have no desire to dress the same as everyone else, live my life the way they tell me to, be micromanaged by a bunch of politicians that want to take my money for their government programs, or any other seemingly innocent ideological ideas that they have, because it will cost you and I our freedoms and our money. It's time that we as exotic dancers take back our economy, our customers, and our income. Whether you like it or not, your money will be affected by the 2012 election. And if you want to make the best living for yourself in the exotic world, go vote the conservative ticket in 2012. You will not regret it. This is Jennifer McCumber here with HowToStrip.com, wishing you the best of success.